Hello, how are you?
Great to see you. Thank you so much indeed. It's lovely to be here, and thank you so much indeed for joining me, whether you're joining us live or whether you are joining us a little bit later on Catch Up. Now, I know we've got an international audience, so it's great wherever you are in the world. It's great. Hopefully, I won't go too fast because I've got a lot to cram in 25 minutes, but I will do my best. And if you do want to make comments in the chat along the way, then please do. Hello to Audra, to Hamlet, to Carlos, and everybody else. And if you do have any specific questions, then we'll try and pick them up along the way, or if not, we'll pick them up at the end of the session. But thank you very much indeed for joining me, as I say. Now, what have we got for you today? Well, of course, we are talking all about how we can look great on camera. How do we engage people when we are in the virtual world? And the reality is, whether we like it or not, we've all had to become TV presenters now, haven't we? It's not something necessarily we plan to do, but it is what we are now having to do. So what I want to do over the next 25 minutes is to really help you to become a lot more confident and more effective when you're engaging your virtual audiences. Because it is very different. You can't take what we did face to face. We can't just do it online and expect the same results, because it's a very different platform. We engage differently with it. You know, we've all become TV presenters, which is okay for me because that's my background. I was spending many years as a TV presenter, and for me, it's quite straightforward. This is me working in a studio in London, and it's what I still do, and I really, really enjoy it. But how do you create that rapport? How do you look down that lens to make sure that you're engaging with your online audience? It's not easy. And, you know, the next question really is, well, why is it so important? Well, the reality is that we thought that virtual working was probably going to be something that was going to be around for a very short time, where in fact, looking to the future, Keypoint Intelligence did some research, and they asked people what they thought about people working from home, working remotely after the pandemic. And the results were quite interesting. And this is what they found. They found that virtual working is very much here to stay. Look at that. Only 18% of people think they will not be working remotely in the future. So if virtual working is here to stay, it means that virtual presentations are also here to stay as well. So we need to engage our audience like we've never engaged them before. We need to make sure they remember what we're saying. And how do we do that with a webcam? And we need to build that rapport with the webcam through the lens, if you like, because when you get that rapport, you gain trust. And when you gain trust, you engage people. And if you have clients, they will buy, or you'll at the very least build better, stronger business relationships. And that's really what it's all about, isn't it? So let's have a look at what we're going to be doing this evening. So first of all, or this afternoon, or this morning, wherever you happen to be, the first thing we're going to look at is planning and preparation. I'll explain how you do it and why it's so important. Then we'll look at your setup and equipment. We'll talk a little bit about how you can look clear and make sure that people are focused on what you're doing and not distracted by things that are around you. Then we'll talk about active listening and why that's so important. And it's a lot more difficult, isn't it? Because you can't read the signs. At the moment, I can't see any of you. So how do you do that? How do you connect with people? Then we move to my favorite section, which is all about delivering online, which is vocal skills and body language. And then finally, we finish up with interactivity. How do we build that rapport by connecting with people with lots of different tools that we have? And hello, New York. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. And even from Beverly Hills, California. Great to have you all online with us here today. So let's come back to preparation. And if any of you ever feel that you're not completely confident, guess what? Being prepared will help you massively. Generally, we need to be shorter, sharper, and clearer with online presentations. We've all heard of Zoom fatigue. And the reality is the best way to make sure that you don't bore people or put them to sleep is to be prepared and also know who your audience is. You might have seen this before with them, which is what's in it for me. What that means is, Who are your audience? Are you solving a problem your audience have? If you're not solving a problem, why would anybody be listening to you? The reason you're hopefully watching today is because you want to know how to become more effective when you're presenting virtually. So that's the problem I'm solving. What problem are you solving? That's really what you need to be focused on first and foremost when you are planning your presentation. Once you've done that, you then need to have a structure. And those of you, if you are from the UK, you might be aware that our tax department is called Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs and Excise. And this HMRC, this is the acronym that we use. So Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs. But I've renamed it for the sake of a structure. So what does it stand for? H is the hook. That's where you just grab people's attention right at the beginning, let them know what they're going to hear, hope that they're going to really engage with what you've got. Then you deliver your message, and there's probably about 4 or 5 components to delivering a message. Lots of stories, lots of examples, lots of testimonials if you can, something that helps people relate to what you're saying. Then you're going to be looking for a recap. And the recap is, you know, the old line, tell people what you're going to say, tell them what you've said. Really important, that repetition to help people understand. You'll notice I'm doing that today. And then finally, a call to action. I've done some shopping channel television in my time. Yes, I'm afraid I did sell some of those weird and wonderful things at all times of the night. But the one thing I knew it was really important was a call to action. How do you want to leave your audience feeling? Do you want them to do something? Just let them know. It could even be in a meeting, what everyone's decided they're going to do. But you need to have that structure and finish with something, a very clear call to action. Really, really important. So that very briefly is the kind of structure that you should really be looking at. Let's have a look now at your setup. And again, in 25 minutes, we can't spend a huge amount of time on this, but I can give you a few top tips on your setup. And the first one is really looking at your equipment. Now, sadly, you're not going to have a professional TV studio that I'm used to being working in, but you might have something looking a little bit like this. Now, there's a few things for you to notice with this. First of all, you see the light. It's above and behind the camera. Make sure the light isn't coming from behind here. Otherwise, you look like you're in a witness protection program, and you sure as heck don't want that, okay? So have the light coming from behind the camera. Those ring lights are okay, but I prefer a softbox option. If you can afford it, have one coming from either side. It's even more flattering, especially when you get to my age. Then make sure sound, probably the single most important thing. Have a good quality microphone. This is mine. This is what I'm using today. But use whatever you want to use, but think of the sound, play it back. Just do a test Zoom recording sometimes. See how you look and make sure it's working. We'll talk later on about body language, but you want to be connecting with the eye line. So make sure your eye line is directly level with the camera. You'll notice that in the picture here, we've got the laptop on books just to get it to the right height. It makes the world of difference. Then people say, should I stand or sit? Do whatever you like, personally. Some people feel a bit more empowered, a bit more confident if they stand, but make sure you've got the same framing there and have your legs apart so you don't do this all the time and you're wobbling, which is really annoying. Likewise, if you're sat in a chair, I wouldn't sit in one of those gaming chairs or something like that. I'd sit in something where you're sitting nice and upright and very slightly forward. It'll really help, but we'll talk more about that when we come to body language as well. The next thing you could be looking at as well is getting a much better webcam, something better than a regular one that you have on your laptop. But sometimes actually, funny enough, they're fine on the laptops. They're just that little bit better. Some people have headphones so they can hear better. That's great, but I would use the little earpods that you get with your phone or something. Or ideally, I've got this, which is a little security earpiece. It's really, really good. You can hear everything, but it's not distracting. It doesn't look like you've got something weird sticking out of your ears or anything like that. So that's just set up very, very briefly. Just a word about backdrops. I hate backdrops. The reason is because when you do this, we lose things and it becomes a distraction. But I would have something nice and clean like you can see behind me. Whether you've got a screen or a plain wall, That's just really nice, because you just want people to be able to see what you've got behind you. Okay, so do try your best to have something very clear that's behind you when you've got that backdrop. Okay, so that's certainly what I would be doing when you get to that. A couple of other things as well. People often ask me, well, what should I wear? Well, one of the things I suggest you wear is what you would wear to that business meeting. So whatever else you're doing that day, how would you be with those clients? I'd wear the same, but avoid these checks. There's a thing called moire, where you get that's a pixelation effect. You also get it with stripes, and you also get, if you're not careful, if your backdrop is the same color as your shirt, it just looks like you've got a head appearing at the top. So you definitely don't want that. And finally, if you're like me, you're very pale, then I would definitely not wear white. Wear a slightly darker color. It looks a little bit better. But again, have a look, see what suits you. That'll always work well for you as well. Let's move on to listening skills. As a journalist, over the years, I've learned how important it is to really, really listen to the people that you're talking to. And there's a few ways that you can actually do it. And the first thing is to make sure it's really listening, not paying lip service to listening. You know, the people who say they're listening, someone once said, listening isn't just about waiting for your turn to speak. Listening is really listening. Take notes. And as you take notes, I would write them down rather than using a keyboard. Reason for that is because you can write and still look into the camera, where unless you're a touch typist, it's a bit harder to do if you are trying to type at the same time. Ask searching questions, what we call the 5 W's: what, who, where, why, how. All those kind of questions where you get a more involved answer is always a good idea to do as well. And listening is also about being a good audience. How bad is it when we get this situation? You know, the feeling you're the only one on camera, and it's just really, really difficult. So if you want people to listen to you in a meeting or a presentation, when somebody else speaks, have your camera on. Be an engaging audience. Nod. Do a bit more than you would normally. If you just see faces like this, it's really boring. So be a bit more animated, smile, give a thumbs up occasionally, whatever it might be, just to show people that you're engaged. And the chances are they will engage with you when it comes to your turn, because this is all we get to see on the screen. So we do have to be tolerant. We have to bear in mind what people's circumstances might be. You know, they might have kids around, there might be pets around, especially at the moment where so many people are still working from home. So take it and make allowances for that as well. It really does make a difference. And if there are distractions, if you get distractions, just deal with them. That's fine, because we all know that's what's going to happen. Let's get on to my favorite subject, delivery. How do you come across? Because at the end of the day, you want your message to come across, not all of the distractions, which is why the setup's important. But how do you do that? First thing I always got taught as a TV presenter is, unlike an actor, a presenter has to be themselves. They have to be authentic. They have to be themselves. There was a great quote by Oscar Wilde once, who said that that it's really, really important that you are yourself. He said, be yourself, everyone else is taken. What a great quote. And, you know, these days in the world of remoteness and so on, and the whole pandemic has made us all realize how important authenticity is. So be yourself, be you. As someone once said, the real you is much better than a fake somebody else. So be you. Don't be tempted to copy other people. Now let's talk a little bit about your voice, and let's talk about what you can do to actually really boost your voice and to be better. The first thing, warm it up. Have some water. A glass of room temperature water is a really, really good way to do it. Speed, probably a little bit slower than you would be in person. So apologies if I'm going a bit faster today, but a little bit slower in person helps people catch up with you as well. Use pauses in between your thoughts. It gives you time to think, your audience time to think, and also can add a bit of drama. Really, really helpful. Thank you very much indeed, Carlos. Really appreciate it. Glad you're enjoying the webinar. So what else is there? Vocal variety, a big one, especially if you're reading. One of the things I know with it's great working with BigVu, and their tools are really, really helpful. But when you're reading your notes, be careful you don't sound a bit monotone. Imagine your voice is on a roller coaster and you're going up and down with your voice, changing the tone, changing the speed, changing the volume. Bring in that variety as much as you possibly can to make it more interesting. Unless you're used to using a teleprompter, maybe use BigVu to have bullet points so you know exactly what you're saying when you do it. You know your topic area, so just think about using those top points. Another thing is to smile as you speak. I know it sounds a bit cheesy, but it really does work. It softens your face, and a smiling voice sounds a lot better as well. And by opening your mouth, you'll get lots of clarity as well. Did you know 38% of people actually lip read? They'll be looking at your mouth. That's why the framing of you on the camera is important, so you're close enough for people to be able to do that. And a great way to warm up is to maybe do some tongue twisters. Maybe try some tongue twisters along the lines of these, which are, I think they're just great fun. So try some of these. These tongue twisters are just great fun. So things like, my favorite here is a happy hippo hopped and hiccuped, and you can find loads online, but they're really useful just to get your voice all warmed up. Every professional warms up their voice beforehand. Let's move on to body language. Now, body language is really, really important. It's not easy when you can't see people, and you often can't see yourself. Like for me at the moment, I'm just in that tiny little square at the bottom. So how am I coming across? Which is why recording your presentations can be really, really good. The first thing I say is be expressive. Use your facial muscles, use everything so that people can actually see who you are. Be genuine and be warm. I've talked about sitting or standing. I sit because I'm used to it as a TV presenter. I'm used to presenting sat down. You may find that, and I should say actually for our American friends, TV presenter, same as, I think you would say more of a TV host. But sitting down for me is comfortable. If you feel more empowered, more confident standing, then do it. But keep your framing roughly around the same and make sure you're still looking into the camera as well. Using your hands, absolutely use your hands. Now, we don't want them coming in or out like this all the time. That's not quite so good. But let them be in for a while and do some things over here to over here. That's really good. But even if your hands aren't in shot, and I'm just bringing them up here to show you, I'm doing this all the time when I'm talking because it brings energy to my voice. It makes me a little bit more animated and a bit more interesting. So definitely use your hands, even if they can't be seen. They really, really work. Keep your legs planted on the ground as well. That really helps. It makes you feel more planted, more confident, and really gives you that element of gravitas, which is what you need if you want to be believed and if you want people to really take on board what you're saying. Look into the camera. You've probably heard that over and over again. So I put two big arrows next to my camera, as you can see here, just to remind me that's where I should be looking. Maybe not at my notes all the time. I should be looking down, looking at the camera wherever I can. It makes a massive difference. We all know trust is about seeing into people's eyes. So it really, really does make a big, big difference. Finally, let's move on to interaction. Interaction is probably the single most important thing. So really, really appreciate some of the comments that are coming in. Really, really appreciate that. Interact with your audience as much as you can. How can you do that? Well, here's a few tips. Firstly, have an agenda before you start. This is all part of your planning. Let people know what they're going to see. Let them know and let them know when it's going to finish. Put in those breaks in there as well. And those breaks will let people know, especially in an online environment. If you tell people in advance, they know that they've got a break at 5:45 or whatever time it is. So they know then they can go off and do their emails and do whatever else they need to do. Really important if you're doing a long, long session as well. You've got lots of other things there as well. Outline the meeting. Answer questions. That's a really big one. Use questions as much as possible, especially if you've got a really long presentation. You know, anything over half an hour, 30 minutes, you should be breaking up with lots of different sessions. And normally, if I was speaking for more than 30 minutes, every 15 minutes, maybe every 10 minutes, I'd be taking questions from people so that they feel involved, they feel very much a part of it. Another really important thing is make sure people understand the platform that you're on. Some people know the functionality about splitting screens, for example, on when you're doing things on Zoom, for example. So be aware of the functionality, and you don't want to be patronizing, but say, listen, I know most of you know how to use the platform, but just in case you don't, one or two of you new, slide your thing here, do this, do that. And I have that at the beginning of everything that I do on Zoom, for example. That's my preferred platform because it has more functionality for presentations. But let people know, make sure they know what that all is, because it'll really help them as you go along as well. Look at the chat as you go along. That really makes a big difference as well. Again, I've got that in the corner of my eye here. Really helps. Lets people know that you're involved and lets people know that you're actually watching them. You're not just reading from a script. You've got lots going on there as well. What else should we do? I would certainly suggest that you think about every 10 minutes, stop sharing your screen. You'll see I've done that a couple of times today. By stopping sharing your screen, it makes it more interesting, makes it more engaging for people. So stop sharing your screen. I would say every 5 to 10 minutes or so, something like that. Then use engagement tools. I don't know if you know Mentimeter, for example. You can do word clouds. You can get people to put up all sorts of things. This was one I did recently for a team that I was doing some training for. So they told me all about the whole program afterwards. You can then do polls. I did this one as well for people saying, how do you feel about presenting online? Really helps. And Mentimeter, there's lots of different ones that you can use. Just use as many as you like. It really does do a lot of good. And finally, take lots of breaks. Give people a chance to go and get a cup of coffee, get a drink, things like that. Really interesting question about background music. Personally, I wouldn't do it because I don't want any distractions. I want people to be focused on my message and nothing else. I don't want people to be focused on what's behind me. I don't want people to be focused on what's around me. I want people to be focused on my message, because that's what they're going to remember afterwards. And that, if you remember, we talked about having some things that, those call to action points. That's definitely what you need to be looking at if I was you. So what else? When you're looking at engaging your virtual audiences, these are all the points that we've covered. And by the way, one of the things you'll notice, stick to time. Don't run over time. That's really bad form because people have got probably other meetings. So stick to time. That's really important. And planning and preparation will really help you do that effectively. So stick to time. Remember with the preparation, what's in it for them? Remember the HMRC, your hook, your message, your recap, your call to action. And notice what I'm doing here as well. I'm doing my recap now, so you'll remember what we're talking about. Then we talked about the setup. Number one, make sure you can be heard, then make sure you can be seen, and make sure what's behind you is pretty neat as well. People need to focus on your message, not on all the other stuff that's going on. Then really listen to your audience with all of the tools you've got to get a feeling for who's there and involve them as much as possible. When it comes to delivery, think about your lighting. Is it behind the camera? Can people see you properly? Then can they see your mouth opening? Are you smiling? Are you making sure that your voice has lots of variety in it? And then look at your positioning. Look at where I'm filling the camera at the moment. That's kind of what you should have. A little bit of headroom, but not that much. Make sure that your delivery is clear, succinct, to the point. And most of all, make sure that it's memorable. Really important. And then finally, we got to the interaction. Lots of tools, the chat, breakout rooms, ask questions, take lots of breaks. And then, of course, make sure that you don't have all the time looking at your screen. So that's it. just in 25 minutes. Hope you really enjoyed that. If you'd like to find out more, thank you very much indeed, Tal. She's put my email address up there. She's also given you my website. If you've got a smartphone, just look at the screen now. With your camera on your phone, scan the QR code. That will take you straight to LinkedIn. Feel free to link in with me. I'd love to link in with you. You'll find lots and lots of articles up there, loads of things that will help you to become more effective as you present online. So all it leaves for me to say is thank you so much indeed for listening. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and I'm going to answer any questions you've got. I'm happy to stay here for as long as you want, but thanks very much indeed. It's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you, Tal, again for inviting me today.
Of course, thank you so much for your presentation. It was amazing. And if you have any additional questions, feel free to ask them now. I see that you have really good comments over here, an amazing presentation. They really liked your advice. And I sent all the information in the chat, so feel free to contact us or Alistair, of course. Yeah, I think we're just getting a lot of comments saying that you're.
Thank you very much, Hamlet. I appreciate that, and also Alexa there as well. Appreciate that. Hope this is helpful. And of course, if anybody ever wants to get involved in a longer seminar, I'll do anything from about, well, I can do something in 1 hour, 2 hours, or whatever people want. So you can get in touch, and I will let you know how you can hook into them.
Great. So I think they don't have any more questions for you.
I stunned everybody into silence, I think.
Definitely.
If you do have any questions, then pop them in the chat now.
Yes, so I want to thank all of you for coming and watching, and of course you for delivering this amazing workshop, and see you all in the next one.
Okay, I've got one more question there, which I can answer.
Yes.
Which colors can you use on a presentation? Really good question. Number one, I would prefer dark colors because they're easy to see. They're not as blinding as light colors. One of the things you'll see that I always do in my presentations, you'll see that I use PowerPoint. I'll usually use the client's colors wherever possible. It's always a nice thing to do if you're delivering to a client. And also what I would suggest that you do is keep your slides nice and clean, not too much writing, especially if people are watching on their phones, because I'm sure some of you are looking at this on your phone. And if you have tiny writing on your PowerPoint, people aren't going to be able to read it. So big, bold, clear, lots of pictures, that will hopefully work. So thank you very much. And thank you, Carlos and Audra, much appreciated.
Great. So thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next workshop.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.